Hi everyone, this video is for December 2nd or 3rd. What we did today is start with announcements. Also gave you a great chunk of time in class to work on the You Teach Me about bacteria and viruses assignment. And if you finished early, I really suggested that you worked on any missing assignments, or I did have an extra credit assignment if you are all caught up. The last 20 or 30 minutes, I focused on the last of the pathogens we've talked about. So we talked about bacteria and viruses, and now I wanted to finish up with just talking about fungi and protists pretty briefly. And then at the end of the period, just to kind of sum up all pathogens, there is an exit ticket, quick 5-question exit ticket that I wanted you to go ahead and do. As far as announcements, I did want to apologize for the notes that I gave you on Monday. I did include incorrect information, so I wanted to correct myself. So on the PowerPoint, I put that the 4 different types of pathogens are bacteria, viruses, fungi, and parasites, and that was wrong, and it took me a really long time to realize that I was saying it wrong, so I apologize. But the 4 types of pathogens are actually bacteria, viruses, fungi, and protists, not parasites, protists. So today we will talk about fungi and protists to kind of make sure that you get that. In addition to that correction announcement, I also wanted to let you know that the next 2 weeks after, like starting on Monday, we will be starting our final project assignment. So instead of a final exam, you'll have a final project. So with this being said, I wanted to let you know that, I guess go down here real quick, that grades are due Friday, December 18th at 4 p.m. That's when I have to make sure that all grades in the gradebook are finalized. So with that being said, 2 days before that will be your deadline for any missing assignments or quizzes that you just haven't turned in thus far. And of course, you still can, but Wednesday, December 16th at 11:59 p.m. is a hard deadline. And I just threw in that our deadline for the project is the Thursday. And I made this because I have to get those grades in by Friday at 4 p.m. And if I keep having assignments turned in up until the last minute, they might not get graded. So I want to make sure I have time to grade all of them. That's why I gave you these deadlines. If you have any questions about them or if you have any issues, please let me know as soon as possible. Okay, so I was going to give you some time to finish the You Teach Me assignment. So I'm going to talk about what that is real quick. Once you're on Canvas, we're going to go to Modules. And we remember that we have started Unit 5, so we have a new module, Unit 5. Down here for week 16, here's that You Teach Me about bacteria and viruses assignment. So essentially, I have given you questions to look up about bacteria and viruses. I gave you a lot of the information you need in our notes, and I also included some articles that might be helpful. But of course, you can do your own bit of research as long as you're very careful and you cite your sources. But you'll create a video in a Google Slides teaching me what you've learned. So you have 2 options here. You can make a wee video, kind of like exactly the one you're watching right now, how I'm sharing my screen. So you would share your screen with your PowerPoint and just, talk about what you've learned. If you're not as familiar with wee video, I do have an instructional video. But if it's just too much for you, which I completely understand, you can go ahead and just create a video. You do have to send me whatever notes you had, whatever you wrote down the answers to your questions on. Make sure to include information about bacteria, viruses, and your resources. All of that information is here for you. Okay, so video, 3 slides, include your resources, minute long, and here are the questions. So take a look. In my last, in case you missed it video, I go a little bit more in detail about what all is in this assignment, but here we are. So when you're done, you're going to go ahead and submit both your Google Slides or notes and video. If you need to upload both, submit them separately. If you do the we video is perfectly fine. If you have done this and are all caught up and would like an extra boost in your grade, I did also include an ed puzzle here that is for extra credit. So very similar to our classification ed puzzle that we did last week. I started asking you to submit a text box that just says you're done with the ed puzzle, so I know to check. But like I said, this is just for extra credit. You can get up to 7 points. Yeah, that's if you need a little extra boost. If you would like it, you can. If you don't want to do it, you don't have to. So after I gave you some time to work on the assignment, I went over some notes. And last time I did have you take notes and turn them in. This time I just wanted to give you some information. You can totally take notes, and I totally suggest it, but I will not be collecting the notes that you take. So we'll be finishing up the types of pathogens in this PowerPoint right now. So on Monday, we talked about viruses and bacteria as 2 of the 4 types of pathogens. Today, we have fungi and protists. So we're going to start with just reviewing how on Monday we talked about pathogens, and pathogens are organisms that can cause disease. And again, the 4 main types are right there. We also were talking about classification. So on Monday, I did mention the domains. Domains are really, really broad, more broad than kingdoms. But here are some kingdoms that we have accepted as scientists. So we have animals, plants, fungi, protists, archaea, and bacteria. So our bacteria will all be in this kingdom. Our viruses will be nowhere because they're not alive. We'll be talking about protists and fungi today. And you guys know a little bit more about plants and animals, so we've got almost all of them covered. So protists. This kingdom is known as like the junk drawer because it is the most diverse kingdom. There are so many different types of protists. Some are animal-like, some are plant-like, and they just vary greatly. These guys are eukaryotes, meaning that they have a nucleus and membrane-bound organelles. Most of them are unicellular, meaning that they are made up of one cell, but many of them are multicellular. So this is what makes them very unique. Usually when we think of unicellular organisms, we think that they're prokaryotes. They're very simple organisms, but these are unicellular eukaryotes. And they live in moist environments. And I point this out because when we're talking about pathogens and disease, we are a moist environment, so they can do pretty well inside us, unfortunately. And a little tidbit is these guys do move, even though they're tiny and microscopic. So they can move by flagellum, which are these long tail-like hairs here. And they kind of whip them back and forth, kind of like a dolphin's tail. Cilia are these little hairs found here. They kind of whip back and forth too, not quite like these, but very similar, and they help move this guy along. And then they can also move by having pseudopods, which are false feet, so they'll just kind of inch along like amoebas do. And here's some examples of harmful protists that we should definitely look out for. So trypanosoma can cause sleeping sickness and Chagas disease. So this is an example here. I included pictures of what they look like. Giardia causes giardiasis. This is what that Giardia looks like. And Plasmodium causes malaria, and that's what malaria looks like. I added these pictures because trypanosoma and Plasmodium are transferred through insects like mosquitoes. And Giardia, you can accidentally ingest if you are drinking contaminated water from a stream or something of that sort. So it's very important to be careful of these things. Next is fungi. So we know a little bit more about fungi than we think. But fungi are eukaryotes. So most of these are going to be multicellular, so they're going to be a lot bigger. We're going to be able to see a lot of them. Some are still unicellular, though. They have a cell wall made of chitin. So the cell wall is this hard, rigid part of the cell. Outer part of the cell in plants. It's outside of the cell membrane, so they have a cell membrane and a wall. And this wall is made up of chitin. So I put this picture of this insect here too because the exoskeleton, the outer part of this insect, is made up of chitin. So if you ever accidentally step on insects or eat them, that chitin is responsible for the crunch that you hear. And also heterotrophs, they have to eat other things in order to survive. Here are different examples of fungi. So some we are able to eat, some are on our food but we shouldn't eat, some are good and some are bad. We have a little bit of everything in here. So some examples of fungi that we eat and are totally fine are things like blue cheese and mushrooms. But sometimes we do see food mold. So if we leave fruits or bread out for too long, we start seeing these fuzzy green patches of mold. Definitely don't suggest eating those. Penicillin is a great example of a fungi that is super important. Penicillin has been a good cure or antibiotic or an ingredient in very effective antibiotics to help cure different infections. And then down here we have an example of a not so fun fungi, athlete's foot. So this is something that happens when your feet are too damp. Fungi can grow really nicely and cause a lot of discomfort. And that's it for notes. Like I said, very basic, but I hope you have a better understanding of what bacteria, viruses, protists, and fungi are and look like. Okay, so the last thing I wanted to do today is our exit ticket. So we're going to go ahead and go to modules. And this is going to be all the way down. And it's pathogens exit ticket. It's going to say it's a quiz, but it's not really a quiz. It's just in quiz form. So you'll take this. It's worth 5 points. It's only 5 questions. So here we have just what's an example of bacteria, what's an example of a virus, what's an example of a fungus, what's an example of a protist, and tell me one thing you've learned about each. So tell me one thing you learned about bacteria, viruses, fungi, and protists, other than, what the examples are, of course. And you just type that in here, 1, 2, 3, 4, and submit. And then you're done. Hope you all have a great rest of your day. Let me know if you need anything else.